Okay, we are live on air. Welcome to Pixel Fondue's live stream. It is now September 1st. I was hoping to do this in August, but this is, I guess, officially the September roundtable. Yeah, there's my feedback. Okay, awesome. And we got sirens.
That's me.
It's going to be a good one. We got sirens. It could, as long as it's not like missile warnings in South Korea with Frank over there. We're good. Just look. Where are you, Warren? Anyway,
it's me. It's New York.
Oh, it's New York.
Oh, yeah, it is. I have to take my earphones out to hear.
Could be anybody. Okay. So, all right. So, off to a rocky start a little bit. Tried the live stream. Tried to go live a few minutes ago, and it wasn't working. And then had to update the links. And so here we are. A little late, but that's fine. People watch offline generally anyway. So it's been a while since the last one. We have some new contributors at Pixel Fondue. So I think first things first, let's introduce the new contributors. We've got Frank Elizabeth over there, second from the left, and Lauren right next to the icon of the artist formerly known as Uzan there. And
hello.
Okay, we got it. So Lauren, typically with a contributor, we'll take a look around, and I'm going to lock myself here. And, when I see somebody who does some training online, who's active in the community, I'll go out and ask them, hey, do you want to be a part of Pixel Fondue? This is what we do. And most people, everybody generally knows who we are by now. But typically people want to come on, and we just try to do 1 or 2 videos per month. Lauren, I first noticed her work when she had released some paid training, CAD training, essentially, straight from Foundry. And started being active in the Slack group, I believe. And Adam and some other Pixel Fondue members started mentioning your name. We're like, okay, we could certainly use another person here. And a woman, no less. So like 37 dudes. We've been trying to get more women into Pixel Fondue. And honestly, it's been hard. It's been hard to...
I believe it.
Yeah. So that's Lauren. Let's talk a little bit about Lauren real quickly here. Ask her some questions. Let's see, in terms of you, again, as we've stated, being a woman and in this industry, what led you here? How long have you been working in this industry? What sort of circuitous path did you take to get here?
I feel like I'm pretty new. I have like really bad imposter syndrome. So I studied industrial design originally. Not even that long ago. And while I was a student, that's where I discovered Modo, decided that this was way better than SolidWorks and everything else that I was working on, and finished that up, started working a little bit. And shortly after I started learning Modo, I decided that I was capable of teaching Modo. And I started teaching locally here in Toronto, where I live in Canada, and developed a class that I taught at a local college where I rented out classroom space. That went really well. And that's kind of what got me into the teaching side of things. And then I started working for local studios here and doing my own freelance work. So
wait a minute. Let me back up. So you decided you were going to teach, and you just went out and got yourself a little classroom and started teaching?
Yeah, took some chops, I think. But,
yeah, that's showing some initiative. I think that's great. So it didn't open up an online section. You just actually got a physical classroom and said, I'm Lauren, I am teaching 3D.
Yeah, well, they were charged, like, I rented classrooms actually at the University of Toronto, and they're only like, I looked it up, it was like $20 for an hour, and they give you Wi-Fi. So I was like, well, I might as well just rent this as my own office.
Yeah.
And, so I rented classes for like 10 weeks, and then I just emailed a bunch of teachers in industrial design programs throughout Toronto. So they teach it at Humber College and OCAD, and just asked for some FaceTime in front of the classrooms, prepared a little PowerPoint presentation, and went around saying like, hey, I'll teach you this. It's cool. It's a great program. It's really done a lot for me.
Were you mostly pitching it as a sort of animation and rendering solution? These are design students who are probably working in SolidWorks or something like that. Is that the idea? More
so just for like the modeling paradigm that comes with Modo as opposed to SolidWorks, I found to be a lot more fun. In industrial design, they really stress like practice sketching, practice designing, so that you don't end up having to have to do CAD all day because that's miserable. And and I believed it because doing SolidWorks all day can be rather miserable. And then I found this and I just started to really enjoy CAD and 3D, and it just basically changed my whole career path. And then I went back and I was like, actually, this can be a lot of fun. It's just SolidWorks is a lot of not fun. But when you're iterating and when you're designing, it's really good for getting really quick things out there. And you can create really compelling, nice, beautiful images as opposed to the typical SolidWorks renderings, which we're used to seeing. So just seeing how much it did for me in a short period of time, I just felt so excited. And I think that's what really pushed me to go sell the classes. But I did have a moment when I got in front of that first class being like, what am I doing? Like, who do I think I am? I just learned this like a year ago. Well, a little bit longer than that, but I'm still pretty new to
That's awesome. So was Modo's ability to load up SolidWorks files natively part of the decision-making process in going to Modo?
No, I was ready to never look at SolidWorks again. I think I saw one of those promo videos of just like the bevel tool, just like shooting out a bunch of shapes. And I was like, whoa, like that is so much better than what I have to go through to do the same thing. And I just like that you could kind of touch your model and you're sculpting more so than typing in parameters to describe something. So it just really sold me.
Well, let me ask you this. As a non-designer, when you're doing design work, do you feel like you're engineering versus creating art? Or when you're in Modo, do you feel like you're creating art and you can kind of leave some of that engineering stuff behind? Is that the appeal? Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's eventually what made me like sort of ultimately leave industrial design formally. I liked the puzzle of putting together 3D things. Like I used to build furniture before I did industrial design, and I liked just sort of figuring out how to put things together. And it just seemed like a natural thing that I would enjoy industrial design. But after a while, I just didn't care about a lot of stuff in terms of like how things fit together and making tolerances. Like I just want to make stuff. And then I kind of just realized that I like to just make stuff look good. And then Modo working that way was more artistic, that still had all the same problem solving things that really got me excited. And then it kicked out all the stuff that I didn't like. It was a perfect separation of good and bad for me.
You know, I would bet there's a lot of people out there like you. You should start like a Modo group for recovering SolidWorks designers or something like that.
I think that's what I was really ultimately trying to do, was start my cult when I went out to sell those classes.
All right, that works. So I noticed you do have some training right now on the Pixel Fondue site and also on your site, and it's sort of related to. It has a bit of an industrial design feel to it. I know you got some drone stuff in there, going through animation and rendering as well. And if you haven't seen any of Lauren's videos, just go to the YouTube channel. I think her retopology video is featured at the top right now. She's got a great presentation style. She's super polished, even though she's calling herself an amateur here. She's got a great presentation style. You really do. And I know Foundry is working with you again on something. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that should be coming out pretty soon. A little while ago, the Foundry did this 3-part challenge that I think Ellery organized, where you had to solve a little puzzle. There's like a baking puzzle, and if you have like a video game puzzle logic kind of brain, it would have been right up your alley. And then once you finish the challenge, there was usually a code word that would reveal itself, and you got to punch that in for a prize, which is a nice little piece of positive reinforcement sandwiched with some learning. And the whole idea is just to get new people into using Modo. So we're doing another thing like that is much more modeling focused. And it really starts with just the fundamentals. I think all of the new Modo tools that are coming out and the kits, the mop bullying kits, those are great. But for somebody who's never seen a polygon before, you kind of got to start with the fundamentals. And those are the new users that they're trying to pull in. So the first challenges are super basic, and then it kind of goes more advanced from there.
So somebody on a chat link just is sort of astounded. Sunny is basically asking, you really only started using Modo a year ago?
I touched my first polygon in 2014, and
first polygon.
And like all of this, like when people talk about like, oh, back in the day we had a punch in our own court, like all that stuff, I'm like, don't know, Grandpa, I just got here. So
hey, I'm not a grandpa. I have to put coordinates.
The wisdom is invaluable. But yeah, I like everything. I didn't know anything about rendering. I didn't know anything about anything. I came in here green as could be, and just tried my best to catch up as quickly as possible. And sometimes I'm amazed at how far I've come so quickly, and then other times I'm like, man, I'm the dumbest person in this room right now. I have no idea what's going on. So,
well, I think that's really inspirational. Like, you just got up, you switched programs, you got up, like, immediately went out and opened a business, and look, getting like being active on forums and Slack and over at Pixel Fondue and getting your name out there. I always say this: it's a small community. It's like the entire worldwide 3D community is a small community. And it really, if you're interested in doing this stuff and have some motivation, look at Lauren. She's been she came around just a few months ago, and now like everybody kind of knows who she is, and she's doing training, and I think that's great. So, real quick, Zach, Soares, is it Soares or Soares?
Either. I don't, both are technically wrong. It's Soares.
Well, not really either. I think it's neither.
I guess
okay.
None of them are wrong, but or more wrong than the other. But carry on. Okay,
carry on. All right, so we'll get to Zach. We're going to interview Zach here in a minute. Zach's a voxel artist, and we're going to get back to him. He just joined us live. We're running a little behind, I mentioned earlier, because of my technical suckiness, or I don't know. I blame Google. You suck, Google.
Where's the chat link to this? Sorry.
What's that?
Where's the chat link to this that you were referring to?
Oh, so just go to the live stream. I posted it in the Slack group and Pixel Fondue tweet and the forums, and then you could just see a chat over on the side, the live chat. And feel free to jump in, actually, Lauren, if you want to, interact over there. I try to keep my eye on it. It's hard for me to keep my eye on it and talk. Ed usually does that. But yeah, so if you want to open that up, that'd be great. Let's go to, real quick, Frank Elizabeth. And Frank, how you doing, Frank?
Yeah.
Frank there he is. Okay, Frank it's very late in South Korea right now, so thank you for staying up. Frank is one of those guys who contacted me. Now, he also knows Pascal, because they're both very active on the French Moto users groups over there. And while Pascal's in New York, Frank is over in South Korea, but he's just recently joined Pixel Fondue, has some tutorials coming up on mesh operations. But again, let's go real quick. Give us the quick background on Frank. And when did you start in 3D? What are you doing now? Why are you in Korea?
So, well, there's some plane around.
Was that plane? Oh, that's still okay. We're good. We're still.
It's me. I'm gonna mute right now.
Airplanes in Toronto, not South Korea. All right.
So to bounce on what Lauren was saying just a minute ago, I've touched polygons since maybe 12 years now, or maybe more. I can't remember. That was
touching polygons for 12 years. Okay, good.
Yeah, touching the polygons, and I've just go to some school for because I was really inspired by the works Pixar does, and I think at my generation that was a really big inspiration for many of us.
Right up until they released Cars, right? And then boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cars is
a long time ago before that. And that was really interesting because many stuff have gone out. I was interested by VFX and movies especially, but during my schools, I didn't found the opportunity, and probably also probably because of my my skills and my possibilities in this field, that was difficult to find some work. And as I was worried about the financial part of paying some schools and on this, I've decided to jump into some partnership into a company that was making some serious gaming. So serious gaming can be that can be attached to simulations and stuff that can be used into the industrial part or for insurance purpose or teaching purpose. And I worked for that company for about 7 years, developing some driving simulation.
Were you working in
especially
Europe
for
at the? Were you in
teaching.
Europe at the time?
When I was in France, and during
In
that
France.
time, early at that time, I've met my wife's. She's Korean, so we've decided to live in France for sometimes, and after sometimes she needed to go back to his own country, and I understand now because I've lived in Korea for about 7 years now from now. So it was a big decision, but that was interesting because it pushed you to goes back to your principle and maybe understand things in a different point of view, and meeting some people that really didn't care about foreigners, or they just think about Americans and the people who are staying in Korea. So that was interesting to push myself, finding some new opportunity, and I found one in the city I live. That was a long road to find because to speak English. And
do you get mistaken for an American over there? Do you before you I assume just because of the large American presence in South Korea with the military, if you're a white guy walking around in South Korea, maybe people assume you're American.
Yeah, they assume this, and I assume this also. I mean, I can play with this, but it's interesting because people are not really aggressive, and the way you live in Korea is really not what you can see in the newspaper with the menace and the frightened leader at the north. So that's not the way it is here. It's really a peaceful country and really welcome people that take care of you. The services are really great, if I can compare in France. So that was interesting, and so now I'm working into that company. We've made some AR and VR contents,
okay,
especially for industrial companies that wants to teach or train some engineers to use some tools, working with Samsung and some of the leaders in the country. So that was a sideways, I could say, but it got the same benefit as the skill I've got during my career in serious gaming.
Well, let's talk about VR and AR a little bit here, if you don't mind me segueing into that real quick. Also, Lauren, I don't know, people are asking for your website over on the live chat. Did you ever find that?
No, not at that time. I didn't take a look at this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. For 1 sec. Okay. I think Lauren's muted. So, Windows just released their VR, AR API. Well, I think they released their API a while ago, but I've just seen a flood of mixed reality headsets coming on the market from, the usual people in PCs, Dell and HP and everybody. I'm guessing mixed reality is capable of VR or AR, right? They've got front-facing cameras, maybe that they could do AR. But they could just turn them off and do VR.
The way I think that the main difference between the VR and the AR is related to the display. You can get you can maybe probably knows about the HoloLens and the HTC Vive. That's two different kind of things, and the way it works in AR at that moment, I should say it's really interesting the way that it works, but it's still difficult to use it because there's less contrast than in a typical display, because it's an additive display, and you see through your glass, and you see only the colors, and you cannot see any black value inside the
in
display.
AR
The way it
is what
works,
you're saying. You don't have a lot of.
in
I don't know if you've
in
used
AR,
AR
yeah.
goggles, like I think what Frank is talking about is it's not a great graphical experience because there's not a lot of. It's not a brightly lit pixel. It's a sort of a dim image superimposed on reality, which is much brighter, and you can't have black obviously because black is transparent in augmented reality.
So for the HoloLens, that's really promising. I mean, the way it works, it's really interesting because that's wearable. You have no cables and stuff like it is with the HTC Vive.
Right, no cables is key
for the VR. So that's really interesting. And anyway, even if we've seen the presentation of the HoloLens a few years ago now, it was really blowing away any kind of technology like this.
Right.
But many other companies like Epson, Dell, and many others have made some prototype of this. But the way HoloLens have made it is different.
HoloLens, I don't know if you've used a HoloLens, like essentially, I thought it was really cool. Like I've done the HoloLens demo, and the augmented reality part is pretty cool. But like Frank was saying, you kind of have to be in a dark room to get like a really clear image of the overlaid graphics. And the field of view in a HoloLens is really tiny. It's like this. So anything outside of here is just cut off. So you have like a character. If they get just right in front of your face, they get cut off. So that really has to be fixed. It's nice, like Frank was saying, there's no cables, and I think but it's interesting. Like I noticed. Go ahead, Frank.
The way the graphics also can be sustained with the performance is totally different than the VR. The VR can process on graphic card on the PC, and on the tethered HoloLens, it's much more like an iPhone 4 in terms of performance. So actually, that's not really great, but it tends to push the developers to optimize things. So that's interesting also in this way.
Yeah, I don't know how long it is. Like essentially, right? Like a HoloLens. It's not like you strap a GeForce 1080 to the back of your head. Like you don't have massive graphical performance on a HoloLens. And so I don't know if that stuff is. I don't know how far out we are from really great graphical performance on a tetherless headset that doesn't look idiotic. So I think actually that's probably pretty far away. But it's exciting to be that now. And actually, Vive and Oculus both just cut their prices. So if you're looking at getting into this,
of course,
it may be a good time to do it now. And the new hardware, at least the new GeForce lines, I'm sure the new Vega lines are able to handle the refresh rate. The thing with VR is you've got two displays and a higher refresh rate. So you really do need decent graphics card.
Yeah, the resolution also is really important.
Yeah, the resolution.
Especially if you have some text and you want to explain some stories into a game or things like this, it can be really difficult with aliasing.
Yeah. So bringing this out, just bigger picture, let's talk, since we're talking a little bit about GPUs, let's talk about SIggraph a little bit. First of all, Yuzan, you still around? You went to SIggraph.
I am still around. I did go out to SIggraph.
It's kind of creepy, man. It's like this.
Sorry,
I am still here.
It's either that I have to drop off because I actually going to be driving in a little bit, but I did want to continue in the call.
All right. So back in the old days, SIggraph was super exciting. I remember the first SIggraph I went to. This was back in the days where SGI still ruled 3D. Lauren, you probably don't even know what SGI is if you've been around. If you're just new to it. It's the cool purple computers that cost like
it really is 100,000. Hey, Greg, it's really not that cool.
I do know
it's cool. Wait, I've got one in the room here behind me. I moved them. Dang it.
I work with a guy who felt that it was very important for me to be up to date on all this stuff that I've missed out. So I've seen a picture of this computer. Yeah.
So, back in the day, you walk into SIggraph and you see like a big SGI display when you first walk in with a purple refrigerator-sized computer that costs $500,000 and a version of Alias Wavefront that costs $50,000. And you never actually see those things in real life. So it's very exciting. Or they'd have like a whole cockpit of an F-15 or something like that with a display on there. Now you walk into SIggraph and what do you see?
Well, you see a lot of companies that are still kind of trying to use this place as a platform for their products, but I mean, it's a shell of what it used to be because because of the internet and people already knowing what products you've already released. Nobody's really releasing stuff at SIggraph to compete with each other on the same day. So most of the time you're going there, you kind of already know what's going on. It's not as exciting, I feel, especially for the exhibition. So obviously if you're going for the papers, there's a lot of amazing talks and things like that. But if you're just going for the exhibition to see that's the software/hardware show floor, I didn't feel it was exciting or really even worth going, to be honest. And this year specifically, there's nothing that new. Sorry to say that. It's
more for fanboys.
Yeah, well, that, and I think the biggest thing I got out of it is that it's a great place to go and connect with these companies personally. So you go there, you talk to the people that are involved, not necessarily to see what's the latest thing, but to connect with people. There's always something to gain from the networking aspect of it, either for getting a job or collaboration or a partnership. And I feel that one is probably, the most valuable thing out of the SIggraph experience, but it definitely is not the exhibition hall to look at products.
Yeah,
at least for me, and not everybody reads up every day on technology, so that may not be the same thing for students that are just starting out and kind of overwhelmed with all this stuff. I think that may be a more appropriate thing for them.
Yeah, I agree. Like that, when I go to SIggraph, it's actually meeting people there, the people behind the products you use, that is the most memorable thing. And I think it's different meeting somebody in person than online. I think there's still something to be said for meeting somebody in real life. Pascal, Steve, or anybody, Zach, you want to jump in? Anything jump out at SIggraph as interesting, or was it just kind of a meh show?
I went to one SIggraph about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was already not that interesting. I thought just to go to the exhibition floor and going to the talk is just too expensive for just a simple user.
Probably.
So it was nice. I met at the time it was Luxology. They had a small thing in the back, and
yeah, they were.
Ryan Drew was doing the demo, so it was fun. But it wasn't. I'm glad I went once. I'm not going to go back a second time.
Right, Ryan Drew. I gotta get Ryan on here. He was if you've been with using Moto for a while, he was in house at Luxology before they were acquired by the Foundry. Did a lot of their internal demos, and he went to work at ILM. And I think he's over at Apple now. Actually, I should get him back on here. He's on. Were you gonna say something?
No, I was.
Yep.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. No, I was saying, yeah. Ryan. I saw Ryan when he first started ILM, and he was great. He was a good artist when he started, but then I think a few months in, I visited him again, and the transformation of his skills was so large. He became such a great artist after that. It was just an awesome thing to watch.
Yeah, let me tell a quick story about ILM. I went to visit Ryan there a number of years ago, and so, if you're a Star Wars fan or an ILM fan, it's a little overwhelming. You walk in, you see the Yoda statue with the water coming out of it, and you go inside, and there's the Darth Vader costume and all the, Oscars and Boba Fett costume and all this cool stuff. But the coolest thing I saw there was he was in the art department, and he took me over to a set of file cabinets. He's like, "Hey, check this out." And he pulled out a file cabinet, and there's all these nondescript black binders in there with movie names on the spine, just sort of like that crappy, label maker you have. You just sort of stick it on there. He's like, "Look at this." He grabbed one that said Jurassic Park, pulled it out, and opened it up. And it was the original storyboards, hand-drawn storyboards from pre-script, I'm guessing, or maybe rough script of the entire movie, beginning to end. I guess it wouldn't be pre-script, but it was probably sort of like rough draft of Jurassic Park. And so you flip it to the page of the Tyrannosaurus breaking out, and it's just this hand-drawn, some awesome artist in the art department there had drawn all these things out. I thought that was just, and everything was in there. Everything they had done was in there. I thought that was the coolest thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that cool? That was cool. I don't know. As a 3D guy, I'm still more impressed by 2D art.
Now, for me, it was when I walked in, I think it was early on, and they had a maquette of, what's his name? Davy Jones from Parts of the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
It was this 18-inch sculpt made from just clay. It's not colored or anything, but it was the most amazing thing. It wasn't even put in a glass enclosure or anything. I was like, "You guys just leave this stuff around?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, you know, I would just take this. And somebody must have heard me, because the next time I went there, they put it into a glass enclosure and gave it proper respect, because it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Sculpted.
You go in there, you come out wearing a stormtrooper helmet. You know.
Screw the David, screw all the other stuff they've done classically. That one was the one I go for.
You like that one, Steve? What about you, SIggraph? Anything jump out at you?
There was a draft there.
A
no,
draft?
I mean, yeah, they had a live draft there, I guess. But no, SIggraph is one of those things that every year I'm like, I'm going to go to SIggraph. Yeah. I'm
sorry.
Every year I say, I'm going to go to SIggraph this year, and I plan around it, and I take my vacation for that week, and then I never end up going. And I guess the only reason, just like Yazan said, I think the only reason I would want to go to SIggraph is just to hook up with people that, you know, I've talked to for years and I've never actually physically met. So, But yeah, than that, I mean, I was excited to see that they're getting they're integrating the Pro Renderer into Moto. So.
Right. So they previewed AMD Pro Render, speaking of GPUs, in Moto. And so I think, go ahead. Did you want to say something else about that, Steve, before I jump into my...
No. I mean, I have not yet bought into Octane or V-Ray, so I don't, you know, I don't know really anything about GPU rendering. I just know that, you know, rendering fibers in Moto, I'd sure like a little more speed out of it. So if they integrate something into Moto where I could actually, you know, do some of these renderings a bit faster, that would be great. So
yeah, so
when you say AMD, fibers, are you talking about like hair?
Well, yeah, even just previewing, I mean, would be great. I mean, just having faster preview.
I mean, so because I use Octane, and I've used it for fur type deals. It's not a straightforward mechanism, but once you get there, oh man, the speed differential is so large, especially with things like fur and the things that you're able to do. I can grab the fur and start putting transparency to it, translucency to it, and I'm not waiting hours. I'm literally waiting seconds, and it's just unbelievable, because then you can start tweaking the shading to your liking, as opposed to like tweak one attribute, render, weight. Even progressive is not that quick to do any portion of it. So and I've got a 40 core machine, so it's not a little.
The progressive render should be network rendering.
Network rendering.
I wish. You know what? Do you guys remember F Prime? Was it called F Prime?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Dude,
F Prime was like
that was so cool. But one of the coolest things it had, speaking of like features that I wish it would, you know, Moto would have, was
F Prime was like 15 years ago for everybody watching.
You know what? It's 15 years ago, and I think it would hold up just as much. The coolest thing was the animation progressive rendering. I mean, it did that out of the box. It would just like, yeah, you want progressive rendering anime, and it would just, you dump it and you just let it go. And if you like it, you just keep it going, and it just gets better and better and better. But you actually can see the entire animation out of it.
Well, I think really cool. A couple things. One, like, just give F Prime its credit if you're interested in like the history of progressive rendering. With, you know, that's, you know, F Prime was a plugin by Steve Worley, who lives out here in Silicon Valley, Menlo Park, I think, and released as a plugin for Lightwave probably 15 years ago. But it was the first time we had progressive rendering in any program, really, commercial program, and it was really ahead of its time.
Had he patented it, we would have all been screwed because you wouldn't have anything else.
Right, you wouldn't have anything else. And so regarding GPU, I use Octane and V-Ray on just about everything nowadays. And aside from just speed, one of the things behind GPU rendering is if you want to double your speed, you just go buy another card and you put it in. New generation of cards come out, you sell your cards on Craigslist and you put 2 new cards in. So it's not just faster, it makes more sense economically. And it's nice to see that coming to Moto. I know a lot of people really wanted to see GPU rendering in Moto. And I think going the route of licensing a OpenCL GPU renderer, so anybody with AMD or NVIDIA graphics cards can use it, is good. I know it's going to be using the standard Moto materials, so you don't have to use special materials like in V-Ray or Octane. V-Ray and Octane will translate Moto materials, but you do have special materials for getting all the features out of those programs, so that's good. And so it's nice to see GPU rendering coming. I don't know. Zach, you have any thoughts on GPU rendering? Or is that not something really in your wheelhouse with the voxels?
But you're saying GPU specifically?
GPU specific rendering, yeah. Are you interested?
It definitely needs to get better for voxels, that's for sure.
Better for voxels.
Yeah.
Well, it does do voxel rendering though, right? If you're using with OpenVDB or.
Yeah, I can use other tools to make it render out perfectly fine. It just doesn't actually render that out as a like per voxel basis. It just reformats and re-renders it as a polygon object.
Right.
So that's something you can kind of like jump over and you can have it not a problem. But if you want to do like voxel effects and a whole bunch of dispersions and destruction based off of the voxels, then that's a goner. Goodbye.
Not happening with GPUs.
Not at all. No. There needs to be optimization.
I wonder if that's so. We'll get to Zach's artwork in a second. So Zach does voxel-based artwork, and so that's what he's talking about. And I wonder if that is a hardware limitation of GPUs, or is just not something they've bothered to tackle with software yet.
I think it's a bit of both. So in terms of, but mostly it's in terms of software. So from all the software that I've used so far, they either just slap it onto GPU processing and then it just completely consumes it, and you can't really do much. They just say, oh well, it's done and done. That's the limit you have. And I'm like, oh okay. But there are people who are trying to optimize it as much as possible so that you can render them out like heavy amounts. I know Unreal Engine already does that, for example, with how they do their particle system with voxels. But and they're trying now to, only for the particle system though, which is odd. So they do that entirely differently, and them trying to make it work for actual mesh rendering and stuff. It's just usually people end up just building their own engine and their own rendering tools.
So, like in terms of the nuts and bolts of sort of the hardware geek out of GPU rendering, like Warren, so somebody just sort of getting into this a year ago, do you get into, do you follow this sort of hardware ups and downs like GPU rendering versus CPU rendering, or for you is it just rendering? It's just a tool and you don't really give a crap like what's happening?
Well, first off, I started in 2014, so not quite a year ago. I'm not that green.
All right.
But I actually just bought I just bought Octane like 2 days ago, and I just built my first rig ever like a week ago. Excellent. So I am jumping on that train. I had what I affectionately referred to as a polished turd before as a computer, so I feel like I'm a bit more caught up now, and I'm just hopefully going to spend some time playing with that this weekend. I've just been on the ropes with other projects at the moment, but yeah, certainly. I mean, I've already felt the pain of slow speeds and using preview render, or just the regular bucket render engine in Modo and preview. So anything that speeds that up helps, and also just for learning. If you don't have something that you compare really quickly, then it slows down the learning process and
yeah. So are you using 2 GPUs in your system, or do you just use your display GPU for rendering and display?
I've got a 1080 in there that's not doing too much at the moment, and I've been using a farm for most of my client work stuff. So yeah, I guess
I think it's really
I
think it's really key to get 2 GPUs in there when you're working. That way you can just sort of, in Octane, you can configure it, and same with any of these, you can just say, okay, this just compute on this GPU, which leaves my other GPU free to jump over to After Effects or keep working in Modo. That's what the other nice thing is. Most of these programs are decoupled in rendering, so you can start an Octane render and hold the viewport, sort of lock the viewport, and then continue working, and it'll continue rendering, and you can continue working at the same time in your other GPU, which is nice. So I expect some sort of Pixel Fondue rig building video, Lauren. I hope you documented it. No.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about. Look at my little list here. Oh, I was going to talk about Booleans real quick, and maybe Zach, you may be interested in this as well. But, we were talking about this sort of resurgence of Boolean workflows and modeling. And again, going back to the old days, like way old, and Steve, you would know, like let's say Lightwave 20 years ago. Booleaning things together was one of the only ways to make stuff. Yeah. And they didn't have all the tools you have today, like bridging and edge loops and edge extrude and all these things we use every day for modeling. And so people used Booleans. You had these sort of ugly models that were hacked together. And eventually, as all these other tools, including sculpting and everything, became integrated into these programs, and modeling sort of evolved into a finer art form, Booleaning things together was sort of looked at as a sort of a hacky, crappy, amateur way to model things. It wasn't a seamless mesh. People would say, where's your wires? And they'd look like a Boolean object with a bunch of triangles in it and n-gons, and think, okay, that sucks. Why are you modeling like that? But what's happened is we essentially, with the advent of ZBrush especially, modeling has become split often into this workflow where you create a high-res object, a character, a tank, or whatever, and it doesn't really matter how messy it is because that's not going to be the final asset. What you're trying to do is match the art direction or the concept artwork using whatever tools you have, whether that be sculpting or Booleaning or whatever. And then you later on, you can go through and clean that up through retopo and baking and create an actual in-game asset. But just within the last year, Booleaning workflows have really blossomed. And I think to really give it credit, I think you have to look at Blender. I think a lot of Blenders, the giant community, and there's a lot of plugin authors over at Blender who try new things. And there was some really cool Boolean workflows coming out of Blender. And then it sort of moved on to other apps. And William, once Mesh Operations came into Modo, William Vaughn created MOPS Boolean kit, which has been super popular, basically taking the technology that was put into Modo by the developers, putting a nicer interface on it and a better workflow on it. And we're seeing a ton of great models coming out using Modo Mesh Op Booleans as well as Mesh Fusion Booleans. There's a lot of Boolean plugins coming out for Maya, including one I think just came out from Mainframe Entertainment, who created the MASH network, motion graphics stuff for Maya. And I guess I just want to throw it out there because it seems like a trend that's sort of risen from the dead, but with the advent of retopo tools plus render, being able to do edge blending and edge rounding in the render engine instead of having to do that via edge beveling has really brought this workflow back to life. And I just thought, have you guys been using it? Like Pascal, do you use Boolean workflows now? Oh, is Pascal muted?
Oh yeah, he's talking.
Can you hear him? Go ahead, Lauren.
As you say, I find it, well, when I first came to Modo, it was a difficult paradigm shift to begin with, going from SolidWorks to Modo. So going back to Booleans again, I find also difficult. My first thought when I'm trying to develop a solution doesn't necessarily go to Booleans, but right. I'm trying to work on that because I do think it's a great way to work. I don't have to worry about how to get the polygons around the shape that I'm trying to make, where I can just, especially cutting circular shapes into a surface. I remember that when I was first learning Modo, learning how I had to cut out a set of polygons and then make them round, that was a moment where I was like, well, I'm out of here. That sounds ridiculous.
Right.
I watched those Tor Frick live modeling streams, and he didn't even show his wireframe. He said he didn't like it interfering with his modeling process, and he was just cutting away and just treating it kind of like clay, almost like, I guess, in ZBrush. And that was an eye-opener for me, and I've been trying to do that more often, but it does come with a paradigm shift that maybe some people find difficult.
You have to start approaching things with that in mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, and especially when you pair it with the rounded edges shader. Yeah. Where then you don't care at all, because the only reason you care about polygons is because you were trained to care about polygons. But the reality of it is you don't. You're talking about volumes and the surfaces, and that's all. I've got to drop off, unfortunately. Greg, are we going to cover the other thing we were going to cover, or are we going to do it another time?
Let's do that in 2 weeks when we have Derek and Shane from Foundry on here.
All right, awesome. Have a good one, guys.
All right, sounds good. So, Zach, you're doing voxel art. I'm actually going to do a screen share to show some of Zach's work. What software, first of all, do you use?
I use a tool called Cubicle, Q-U-B-I-C-L-E. And
cubicle, like sitting in a cubicle?
Yeah.
Cubicle. Okay. You may find it on Mindesk.
Yeah, that's actually what. I don't know if you changed the
site. I think the name of the website. It's made by Tim Wesley.
Yep.
All right, so I'm sorry, I suck at doing two things at once. Can you guys see my screen? Yes, good. Okay, this is Zach's artwork. Zach, you're okay with me showing this, I assume?
Yeah, that's fine.
So voxel work. So actually, when I looked at this, I thought you were just faking it using polygons. So you are not. No. These are actual voxels.
Yeah.
Okay, so describe exactly what a voxel is. We'll start from ground zero here.
Well, its technical term is volumetric. Technical definition is volumetric pixel, but the easiest way is to say 3D pixel. It's like 3D pixel art, essentially.
3D pixel art.
So yeah, so if you were to take ZBrush and then scale it down to such a level where you can actually see all the points that you're editing when you're sculpting a model in ZBrush, then that would essentially be like that would be my version of voxel art, because ZBrush is technically like voxel based in the way it does its sculpting. And so yeah, mine's is the same way, except I don't work with any rounded objects. It's all just blocks, well, little cubes. So yeah, Boolean, using Boolean techniques, it's like one of the only ways to do a lot of like high-end models, like larger models, anything really. Down the line, I ended up building techniques that were that heavily used Boolean. So I would make an object prior to making a shell. I would I would create like a shell, and then out of that shell, I would kind of like put it into another larger cube, and then use Boolean, and then something would come out of that, and that's the resulting object that I would use.
So do you make sort of? Yeah. Do you make sort of prepackaged assets like Lego block sort of things that you could just grab from a asset directory and start building things that way, or do you sort of build everything from scratch?
All from scratch. Everything I build off of, I just generate a cube that's just my usual go-to size is 20 by 20 by 20 voxels. It just starts off as that cube, and then I either build out or build in. Right. The first thing I build is just an object for figuring out scale, and then from there I know pretty much how big I want something, and then it's just constant carving from that.
And so here, if you can, whoops, I think I passed. You have an animated guy running. Like how this little Greek warrior. How do you animate voxels? Can you rig them just like you would like?
Yeah. So thanks to like how Cubicle has they have an exporter, so I can just export everything as an FBX or OBJ, any standard 3D format, and from that I just drop it into Maya and I set up my rigs. But before that, I actually have it so that the characters all split up into little different segmented parts. So that way, when it exports, I can export as a single FBX file, but it has all the divisions. So it's in the proper T-pose in Maya, and then I just connect the joints to the points I've defined, and then
model. Okay, so it's modeled in Cubify. Is that the name of the program?
Cubicle.
Modeled in Cubicle, and then when you export it, it just essentially rasterizes the voxels or tessellates them and down in the polygons, brings them to Maya, and you can weigh it and rig it just like anything else.
Yeah, pretty much.
And pretty much. Okay, so
at that point, it's no longer technically a voxel asset, but it is at the same time because it's been built that way. Unless you're going to start editing the mesh in Maya, then it turns into something else. I don't know what you would call that. Still, I guess 3D modeling.
Right, but if it's going into a game engine, it's got to be, at this point, at least polygons anyway.
Yeah, so, unless you're working with a voxel engine, which then has their own way of taking the actual voxel data and rendering that out.
Is there a voxel engine for Unity or something that'll actually work directly with voxels?
There are. Sorry about that. There's what is it called?
Magica Voxel.
Well, Magica Voxel, we don't have a plugin. Yeah, Cubiquity, I think is the name.
Cubiquity, okay.
Yeah, they don't make their lives easy with these names.
But past time they were Kubernetes.
Yeah, there's a couple of voxel tools. There's also Pica Voxel, Pica Voxel, and that one is probably the easiest one to use in terms of a voxel engine. That one actually takes the voxel format, drops, and you can drop it in Unity, and from there you can actually edit the mesh directly in Unity at that point if you wanted to, and then you can animate it and do what you want. They're also very heavy.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Sorry, go ahead.
Can I slow down and ask a dummy question here? So I don't understand the square cubicle part of voxel. Like I know voxels from 3D Coat, and you're working with like clay, really malleable clay. So what, like, are each of the individual cubes just voxels shaped into a clay? Like I don't understand that part of it.
So yeah, the best way I can say it is like it's pretty much like pixel art. So like your canvas is in a 3D space is all gridded. So I can't freely move objects in like in decimal points. It's all fixed on a single unit of measurement. So yeah, there's no clay of sorts. It's all cubes that I then just place next to each other kind of thing.
So Warren, if you were to zoom, so the voxel mesh in 3D Code, and I'm guessing here a bit, but I think I'm probably right, is this. It's just super, super dense.
Oh, so this is just like super zoomed in,
Yeah,
kind of
super zoomed in.
essentially.
So a voxel
pretty
mesh in 3D will be millions of voxels. You just don't see the cubes because they're so far away.
Okay.
But it's an actual 3D. It's a volume, right? It's a volumetric
It's
pixel.
kind
Is
of
what I
a
always think of.
pixel art, but in 3D.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize that
definitely
was like
That's
Yeah.
looking
all
so
the
close to
points
the
are-
voxels that they were the squares essentially.
So Zach is
yeah,
placing
they
them
are
one
all
by
lined
one.
in the grid.
Versus sort of sculpting lumps of millions of them. It's a
Right.
really cool technology. It's actually been around for a while. I remember voxel games back in the 8-bit days. And they'd use it for trains and some things like that. It's also used in like medical imagery, and it's a cool technology. I like your art style, Zach. It almost looks like you've got a sort of ambient occlusion shading going on here, or something like that. How are you getting this?
There's an extension on Unity called SEGI, SEGI, and it's pretty much a raycast system that's in Unity, so you can have like the nice SAO and all that baking in it.
Yeah,
and it's all real time.
All real time baking. Okay, so
Yeah.
it actually
it gets heavy, but you can actually make it. You can do a bunch of post work to make it not super heavy.
So I have a question about that. Like, aren't there programs where you can take your regular 3D model and just sort of basically transition that into a voxel model? I mean, do you use anything like that, Zach? Or
I did when I first started. I was testing all of the ways to do it, and yeah, Cubicle actually has a.
I think.
Exactly. Yeah, it has an extension where you can just drop in a 3D model
from FBX or OBJ. As soon as I know. And you can change it and subdivide it as a grid, as a voxel.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think Blender has like tools that people have created where it can convert it. It's almost like a shader where you can just convert it into a voxel format, and it's all just a bunch of cubes.
Yeah, you can do that right now in Modo too. There's an OpenVDB node, and you can just plug a mesh into it, and then you define the resolution. So with like what Lauren was saying with 3D code, the resolution would be super high, so fine you can't see it, but you could really just kind of move a slider, so you can go. It's really kind of a cool effect where you have like you could take like a tank and plug it into a voxel node. You have this. If it's super fine, it just looks like a tank, but as you slide the resolution slider down, it just becomes, the grid becomes, smaller and smaller, so the blocks get bigger and bigger. It just looks kind of like the artwork that Zach is doing, and that would be one way to get that look, I suppose, without going in and sort of placing things one at a time. You must take some sort of perverse pleasure in like doing this.
I think it all started out with just me trying to find a tool. I started in early 2013, and I was just trying to find a tool that can do what I had in my mind, and I found it. And it was super preliminary, so it didn't have all the things I can do now. But I just kind of got used to it. But I do like the satisfaction of being able to edit it per cube, and I'm relatively fast.
What's cool is it gives this sort of 8-bit classic 8-bit look, right?
Yeah.
But in 3D, and it's nicely shaded with the sort of ambient occlusion layer on there. It just looks really cool. I'm telling you, when Ready Player One comes out, all this 8-bit stuff's going to go off the charts, right?
Oh, yeah. It's already ramping up. Like when I started, it was dead in the water. The closest thing to it was Minecraft, and Minecraft is not voxel art.
Minecraft is not voxel art.
No, it's a voxel system for its terrain generation and stuff, which is pretty standard. But yeah, the art is all poly. If you guys don't mind, I can share a screen and show you how it looks. That model you just saw, how it looks in Editor.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
So like this is that space character that you saw, and these are all the separations, and this is the cube, like what I see when I'm editing.
That's cool. So, wait, is this Cubicle?
Yeah, this is Cubicle. Yeah. So like this space character, you saw this one here, and so I can just like do whatever. I can just cut it out. You can all work in layers. So if you wanted to, you can edit what's inside the head if that mattered to you for some reason.
It's because it's a 3D everything. It's like a true 3D volume because all those are individual blocks, right?
You can see through.
So you could really blow those guys up really well if you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I've ended up making characters at points that had entire organ systems inside it. When you're playing a game and one of the games that I helped make, when you shoot the character, you actually see the guts inside them. It's like because it's all a voxel engine, you were able to actually trace that information out, which was neat. And so
cool.
I just set up the limbs like this, the hands and all that stuff, and then I just export it exactly like this into Maya, and then I can start rigging.
And is this program free, or is it available?
They have a free trial on Steam, and you can get the base version for $20, and the full version I think is about $75.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah,
so I just can't help but keep thinking you've got to be a little bit crazy to work like this.
I was a lot crazier before because I would do things that were insane sizes, and my aesthetic, I've fixed my aesthetic out so that it's less tedious. So I don't have to cater to all the little bends and objects and stuff. So like previously I did things like let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here. Oh no, it's not gonna be there. But yeah, I had massive models. I think I could.
Are the faces over to the side? Are those some expressions you could swap in or something?
Yeah, exactly. So depending on what kind of engine you're using, you can. I could set it up so that you can just swap into heads and or you can swap in textures if you keep the exact same mesh shape with the voxel asset. Because they can all export the exact same textures. Let's see. Here. Yeah, this one here. So this was building test, filling in. This is simply the interior, I believe, that I did. It's gonna take a while. There we go. And this is massive compared to the character you just saw. It's like a door was, yeah, the size was 42 width, 91 height, and 13 depth for a door. Compared to the character,
pixel at a time?
Yeah, 1 pixel at a time. Though it's pretty easy because you can just generate Cubicle makes it pretty simple where you can just generate a cube, choose what size you want it, and then plop, you got it there, and then you just go ahead and edit if you want the thickness of the door to be like that.
Oh, okay, like a Boolean operation, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, so all the operations are Boolean, so it's really, really simple that way.
Man, that is crazy. So what sort of, are you working on a game right now?
Yeah, I'm currently working on various unannounced games.
Unannounced, so you can't announce them. Okay. Are you working with a larger company, or are you doing this indie style?
My personal project is indie style. I got funding, so I'm just gonna work my way at finishing that project. And outside of that, I'm working with people like Hipster Whale and a few other indie, like smaller indie studios.
So when you got funding, did your art style, did that play into that? Was that something that caught an investor's eye?
Yeah, pretty much. They saw the art style and they found it really interesting, and they wanted to see something that can be like built in full. Since I do a lot of client, like this is my first time not doing client work, so I've been doing. I've always done client work when I started doing voxel art for the past 4 years.
Right, client work for voxel art. So basically, again, I'm trying to like. It's such a cool art style. It seems like that's the type of thing you could pitch as an alternative art direction for any sort of company looking to do something interesting, something to stand out.
Oh yeah, was it 2 years ago? I was working on a VR MMO that was going to be all voxel rendered, and it was all a ray trace engine that they built by hand. And yeah, their whole purpose as to why they wanted to go with voxel art is that it's pretty simple to build out content, and you can build in really, really quick rates, and pretty much it's accessible to anyone. I guess it is a lot easier it's a lot more approachable than it is to do polygon art. Because you just block, just carve at it and you have something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I know, like you said, Minecraft isn't voxel based, but you are building things out of cubes ostensibly, and it's. You see some of the artwork that people have done using Minecraft, and you think, hey, you're crazy to spend all that time making a castle Rivendell down to the like whatever exacting detail, but people do that, and so that's actually really interesting. So in terms of so what do you do the material assignment in Cubicle, or do you do that in Maya?
Yeah. Well, materials, no, you have to do that either in Maya or either in Unity. All I can really do in Cubicle is the texture and the mesh.
But you can tag the text. You can tag the voxels with this particular color or whatever. That'll translate over, or no?
Yeah, that'll translate over.
It will translate over. Okay.
So if you wanted to use some code to read what that information would do, then yeah, you can definitely do that.
So do you have a timeline on, we should keep an eye out for something, or a blog that people can follow in terms of what you're doing?
The best place to find to figure out what I'm doing would be on my Twitter, which is Y2BCrazy.
Y2BCrazy. Okay, I'll put that up in a Pixel Fondue blog post once we get this online. And I guess, how did you? You were recommended to me from Pascal. How did you guys meet? Or did you meet? Or Frank?
Frank.
He's muted.
No, I've just followed some news feed on Twitter about pixel art, and as I was searching for some inspiration with German's group eBoy, I don't know if you know those. They made some really great stuff in pixel art, and I was always inspired by this. And as I followed those newsfeed, I found some works of Zach, and that was really interesting how it works. It changed, and I can say translate the concept into 3D. That's really a huge challenge in terms of shapes and also on the colors, especially. That was really interesting on this, and I followed just the Twitter feed.
The artwork really jumps out. Like I was saying a little bit earlier when I was talking about the Jurassic Park storyboards, and just being involved in 3D every day and seeing, I still like to look at, really like realistic product renders and futuristic weapons and things like that. But the stuff that really jumps out at me is stuff like, the voxel art.
I mean,
yeah, something off the beaten path. Like,
well, it's funny because my color work only got good. I contributed entirely to my girlfriend because she's a 2D concept artist. And I pretty much learned all of how to get better at colors because of her, and so my work started to pop a lot more, not only because of the shape, but because of the color themselves.
Yeah, they really stand out. I think that's great. So she does concept art. Does she for video games as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she works full time at Chucklefish as a pixel artist at Chucklefish, but I work with her on my personal project. She's a concept artist.
Nice.
And we're working together on that project.
And you get to pay her because you got funding.
Yeah.
You're not just asking favors. We know how that is. Hey, honey, could you draw a dragon for me? No.
Yeah, well, prior to that, we were doing mock-ups. We had like a challenge for ourselves where every week we would do a mock-up. And that was both to help just figure out different aesthetics for voxels and stuff. So sometimes we would do something super pixelated, it felt very, very retro, and other times we would do something a little bit more high-end that looked more like I don't know, like more squared out things. And I'll show you something most recently that I did.
Sure, yeah.
And that was, oh boy, I can't type right now. There we go.
Let me lock you. You can do a screen share.
Yeah, just a sec. There we go. So.
Okay, there we go. Oh wow, look at that.
That's not mine. That's Shakarma, who's another voxel artist and a friend of mine. And yeah, so this was most recent, and this is going to be actually part of the aesthetic of the game that I'm working on now, my personal game.
Oh, okay, cool.
So it's like the characters, it's all voxels, but then because of how they're laid out, you can actually.
It looks animated papercraft.
Yeah. It's like I export them unoptimized, and because of that, it's all quads, and then I can just do a nice clean skin rigging because of the quads.
Oh, it looks like there's almost some cloth deformation on there as well.
Yeah. No, yeah.
That's really cool. There's a style of wood carving from a place in Mexico called Oaxaca. I don't know if you've ever seen those Oaxacan wood carvings. No. They're very colorful. Your artwork reminds me a little bit of that. So if you ever, it's spelled really weird, like O-A. Do you know what anybody else want to talk about Oaxacan? Nobody? Oh my God. These are really cool. Okay, it's like Oaxaca, it's like O-A-X. It's just spelled really weird, and I can't spell it.
Oh, the little beads that you put on you put beeswax on it, and then you put little beads along the wooden sculptures, right?
No, it's actually, the ones I've seen are painted, but they're really vibrant. Okay. They're super. I'll find some real quick here. But I always thought they were great. Yeah, Oaxaca, O-A-X-A-C-A. Anybody who's listening, wood carvings. Google that real quick, and you will be amazed. Yeah. So all the animals. You see those? Anybody googling that? I could.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
I saw that there's like a sort of a cult following of voxel art that people print out their art and sell it. I think you do too also, right?
You're saying for like 3D printing?
Yeah. Now you print out your art in 2D and you sell those prints, right?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
And people do that. I saw several other people do it on
Zelda,
Facebook.
Yeah.
The Zelda Mansion, maybe something like this. I saw some 3D printing of the old Zelda Legend.
Yes. Yes. That was some Karma's work. When
really
he
interesting.
got it 3D printed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
really fun to 3D print voxel work because it's like when you're seeing it in like 3D on your computer and stuff, it feels like retro pixel art, and then when you 3D print that, it's like tangible, and you're like, oh my god, I can touch retro pixel art. It's, it's weird.
How's the resolution on 3D printing? Does it have sort of good lines on these little voxel cubes? I mean, does it keep it?
It does, yeah. The resolutions is actually a lot better now, so when you print it out, it doesn't look really, really messy and stuff. But depending on how bumpy you make your voxel art, how many steps you have,
right?
It gets extremely difficult for the printer to keep up with that, because then you're going to have something that's really, like, it gets really messy just as a 3D printing thing, which is another reason why I've got my voxel style cleaned up a lot, so it's a lot more smoother squared spaces, so it can be easily 3D printed.
All right, cool. Anything else on voxels? So I'll post like Zach's gallery and links to his Twitter, the Pixel Fondue feed. It is interesting to me. I've always, like you said, voxels have been around a long time, but they never really took off as a deliverable in terms of when you're creating your game or whatever else. Like, you always end up delivering polygons. And part of that's probably engine-wise. Probably that's sort of market forces in terms of graphics card vendors pushing polygon power versus voxel rendering. But I know they could do incredibly dense real-time voxels because they use it for medical imaging all the time. So the hardware is there. It's just, I'm guessing it's more of a software API thing where they just don't move that over to the gaming world.
Well, the hardware is also extremely expensive. So like I had to build a $10,000 rig so I can do all of my high-resolution voxel art stuff. Otherwise, I would be hard capped strictly by that. And
you run out of memory? Is it memory related? Is that the ceiling?
Partially, yeah. For exporting, it becomes a memory issue. So I have mine has over 100 gigs of RAM.
Oh my god!
Because of that.
Gig?
Yeah. Just so I can export
run model
something.
on this.
Yeah, pretty much. And yeah, prior to that, interesting, like the age of voxels versus polygons is pretty old, because it came down to polygons versus voxels when they're trying to do 3D video games, and it just turned out that polygons are a lot easier to render, and they didn't have graphics cards back then when they started doing it, so it was a lot easier, and the graphics cards were a lot lower powered, so it was a lot easier to use polygons, and that's why polygons became the predominant force.
Right.
In 3D art.
And the sort of VHS versus beta of
3D
elements. Yeah. And so, okay, interesting. All right. So we've been going a little over an hour now. I don't know if anybody else want to throw anything else out there. SIggraph related, voxel related, Boolean related, anything related?
No, I have to go through, so.
No. All right. Let's wrap.
I was going to say one thing. Just earlier when we were talking to Lauren about girls or I should say women. My girlfriend will kill me if I say girls. But women in 3D. I'm actually I'm always surprised when I see someone in 3D who's a woman, because you don't see it very often. It's mostly a bunch of men. But now that I'm getting more into like creating real time assets and game stuff, there's a lot more women in games. Who I heard a while ago that that just as many girls play video games as men do, and you actually see that if you go into like the game developer boards and stuff like that. So it's just sort of interesting.
It's funny is because the production companies I'm involved with, there's plenty of women working there, but they're typically in art direction roles or After Effects or 2D programs, or like concept artists like Zach's girlfriend. And again, that may just be anecdotal. That may just might be my limited world of experience. But for whatever reason, like Zach, I don't know, you're in the gaming industry. Do you see a lot of women doing 3D, or are they mostly art direction, concept art, stuff like that?
I do see a lot in 3D. It's kind of spread across a lot of positions, but I often see it in like production positions and concept art positions.
Right, right.
This is across, I think, like 10 studios I've seen.
It's maybe also a part of the cultural fact. I mean, in Korea, I was surprised by, I done some classroom at the university during 1 year, and I've seen how many women was interested by graphics and computer graphics. And that was really impressive because that was totally the opposite as in France. In France, typically you will got maybe 20 or 25% of women who attend to some schools in CG, and in Korea that was 5% or 10% of guy.
Really?
So it's yeah, that's totally different. It's maybe part of the cultural influences.
Well, Lauren, in your classes, like, what's the breakdown? I mean, are there a lot of women in your classes?
Yeah, the classes that I've taught have been half-half. When I was in industrial design, it was about half and half. And then when I started working professionally, I've yet to meet another woman who does 3D. So,
so maybe it's maybe it's anecdotal, and it's just your experience. But like, Toronto's full of 3D people. I mean, it's not like it's really dense.
Yeah,
population.
I mean, I'd love to meet more women who do 3D. I mean, I've gotten nothing but encouragement trying to get into it, but it's true. It is harder to see. And I think there are some cultural parts of that. I think maybe I would have stumbled into this a little bit earlier when I was younger and first going to school. I ended up going to university for a science degree, though very obviously interested in doing stuff like this.
Me too. Biology.
Biology too.
I actually stuck with it for some crazy reason. And gosh, a useless biology degree. Anyway.
Yeah, me too. I got a BSc. It took me 5 years.
Yes, same here.
Tallahassee. And yeah, and I think it's just like it's amazing how like tiny little things kind of add up to you just sort of not even thinking about it as like a thing that you could do, I guess. And for me, before I got into industrial design, I used to do woodworking, and I built furniture for a while. So 3D was just sort of something that came naturally to me. And I think I just got lucky. Like when I started working at the wood shop, it was all sort of older retired men who were like, it's about time we got a woman in the shop. And they were great. And then they just kind of like picked me up and pushed me further. And then when I got into working studios, they're like, it's about time we got a woman in the shop. And they just did the same thing. They just rallied behind me and helped me learn. And I think I was able to expedite a lot of my learning just because I got so much encouragement, because I think people do want to see a bit more equality.
Yeah, I think we should actually have the whole nother live stream with this topic instead of like doing it all here at the last minute. But I think you're right. I think in my experience is every place I've worked where it's been like 20 guys and one woman modeling, it's everybody was all on board with like hiring other women. Like, of course, like it wasn't a hostile environment towards it. It was, geez, can we get, why don't we, is there any other women who are even applying for this? And there's a lot of encouragement there. So anyway, I think we definitely need to revisit this later on. Maybe we'll make that a topic for the live stream. But okay, so I think I'm just going to wrap us up because we all have day jobs, right? And I know like Frank, it's like 3 a.m, and so he's got to resume work on the fallout shelter.
No, that's okay. That's Saturday on the next day. That's okay. That's fine.
Okay. He's all good. All right, wait there. Zach, you're in London, right? London, England.
Yeah, London, England. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll let you guys go to bed, and then my day is just starting, so I got to get cracking here. All right, guys. Signing off. Pixel Fondue. Thanks for everybody. Newsletter. Pixel Fondue. I said, don't let me forget. I almost forgot.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Upcoming newsletter, Pixel Fondue. So if you haven't signed up for it, go to the Pixel Fondue site, and there's like a sign up thing. We've got a lot of people signed up. We only do like 4 a year, so it's not like we spam you. And we tend to like try and put in links to deals and things like that. So Pixel Fondue newsletter is coming out soon, and sign up for it on our site if you haven't. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.